Well, hello there, family. You're listening to Fired Up Freedom with Steve Ryan. Fired Up Freedom. All right. Do you ever have moments where you feel stress, anxiety, or it's hard to sleep? Then meditation may be the perfect thing to help you. Come and join our meditation channel where there's 24 hours a day on-demand meditation music. Go to steveryan.com/meditation. That's steveryan.com/meditation. It's time to have freedom from the noise. We're all fired up right now. All right, so good morning, everybody. So this is Steve Ryan, and what this is this is the Hello Freedom series. And the purpose of the Hello Freedom series is to help people get to whatever freedom they desire, whether it's financial freedom, mindset freedom, emotional freedom. All of these things matter. And the different topics that we've talked about, it has ranged from passive income to creating income in your industries to how to deal with imposter syndrome or abandonment issues. I mean, we've talked about a whole slew of topics. This week, what we talked about so far, today is Thursday, but we started off this week talking about how do you choose yourself and should you, which was very important. Then Tuesday, we talked about how do you develop a strategy that fits you. And then yesterday, we talked about how does your mindset create financial freedom? Some great conversations. Today, we're going to be talking about, is failure really failure? And tomorrow, we will be talking about how do you move energy? It's going to be awesome. All right. So, is failure really failure? Well, why is this topic really important? I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times people's mindset and how they view their different experience and history, that makes a huge difference. That makes a difference in the steps that they're doing moving forward. You know, it's almost like I look at it two ways. Let's say something happens and in that moment you say, oh, this was a failure, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, what do you do with that? Do you take that as experience and move forward? Will you later look back and say, no, that wasn't a failure? See, I personally feel that failure is all subjective. It's all about how are you looking at things in that moment? How are you, viewing it, and what will you do with it? So as usual, I came up with some acronyms for today. And guess what the acronym is for today? FAIL. FAIL. How fitting to the conversation. All right. So the F in FAIL stands for finding your solution. A is for action. I is for internal process. And L is for looking at the big picture. So let me say that one more time, and then I'll jump into talking about each one of these. And as usual, if anyone wants to come up afterwards, just go ahead and put in your requests now while I'm talking, and then I'll look at that as we move forward. So again, FAIL for fail. F is for finding your solution. A is for action. I is for internal process. L is for looking at the big picture. So let's start with F, which is finding your solution. You know, when it comes to, you doing something and you feeling like, oh, this isn't working or this didn't work for me, finding your solution is it can be a very complex thing. It requires you to look at, okay, well, what happened and can you see why did it happen? Now, I want to make a note here. Let's say you don't know why it happened. Let's say you can't figure it out. Okay, that's okay. Maybe you can make a note of it and then just go on your path of researching or moving forward, or maybe talking to some other people about it, see what they have to say, their input. This is where having a network and mentors really come in handy. And if you're someone who don't have a mentor or don't have a network of people, there's plenty of places to find it. Here, like right now we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're in Clubhouse, we're in Twitter Spaces, we're in LinkedIn, other places. You can start getting to know people, and over time you are going to come across someone who's either in your field or industry or in some kind of topic that you're interested in, and maybe your mentors or someone else may have had that an experience where they went through something and they share their why. And even if that why is different than your why, it may trigger some solutions inside of you, like, oh, well, I didn't think of trying it this way. Maybe I should try it from this angle. In other words, knowing how to process what happened. And again, if you can't come up with a solution, make a note of it, journal it. I love journaling. You know what I mean? I'll make a voice note or get on Google Docs and make a quick note to myself, like a lot, and that way you may find the information at a later time and then come back to it and say, hey, now I have a different perspective because I have more information now. Maybe this is why this happened. You see? So F is about finding your solution, finding your why, trying to discover why did it happen, and also why are you seeing what you're doing as failure? Because again, failure is so subjective. For those who wasn't here yesterday, I talked about how, on my path to financial independence, when it came to real estate, I started off doing rental properties where I was a landlord. And I came in at a time to where, for me, being a landlord, it just didn't work for me. Other people, it worked great. I saw other people, it was good. They had some good tenants, blah, blah, blah. It was great. Maybe because they used a management company. Maybe at the time, since I was like 19 years old and stuff, people were looking at me like this young kid. I mean, who knows why or what? But all I know is as I was acquiring properties, it was going fine for a while. And then it got to a point where a large percentage of people was having issues paying their rent. And I'm like, why is this happening? And it put me to the point where I had to end up filing bankruptcy over these properties. But I could have looked at that as a failure and say, oh, I felt, now at the time I was going through it. I was in my early 20s and I was just like, I felt defeated in that moment. I was like, oh, like, why am I doing this? Like, how did I let this happen? You know what I mean? I had my moment that I went through that. But then I said, you know what? I'm going to find a way to make this work. That maybe the renting wasn't for me and I don't want to be a landlord. So I stopped being a landlord. And what I did is it made me refocus. And so I started going after tax sales. I was already going after tax sales, but I came across this idea from like a workshop or some event. And I talked to someone. The event was about something different, but when I met a couple of people there and I shared my story, I remember, I wish I would have kept in contact with him. I think his name was Kevin or something, but he was telling me how, he says, have you ever heard of, holding a note? And I'm like, what does holding a note mean? He goes, where if you own a property, then you can be a note holder, a lien holder, and like owner financing. Then you won't have to worry about tenants and all this stuff. Like, people will look at it differently. I was like, that makes so much sense. I know I have his information somewhere. I need to thank him. I need to find him and thank him because it was a conversation. And as I was talking and sharing what I perceived as a failure, he opened up my mind to that. No, it isn't a failure. Just, after you're done with bankruptcy and all this other stuff, like, go after it a different way. And so that's when I thought about it. I said, well, it seems like I'm going to have a lot of capital to acquire properties this way because it will require me to own it free and clear. And that's when I thought about these tax liens and stuff. I was like, you get a property through a tax lien sale or tax deed sale, depending on the state that you do the auction in. A lot of times they have it like the first Tuesday of the month. And I was like, well, what I've done so far, I don't owe a mortgage on. So why not go that route? So I turned that, what I perceived as a failure, into an opportunity. And what I did was I got acquired properties through tax lien sales and tax deed sales, owned them free and clear. And then what I did is if they needed rehabbing or whatever, made them in good condition. And then when I sold the properties, unless I needed like to raise capital, but I sold it as owner financing, and to where people make mortgage payments to my company as a lien holder. And that has provided me, that and stocks have been like the two best things for me in my life that has provided me passive income, even to this day right now. Like right now, a lot of you seeing me live, you see a different background right now. I'm traveling to Europe. I'm currently in Canada, and having that financial freedom allows me to do that. It allows me, if I want to get up and go travel, I will get up and go travel. So this is what's inspiring me to bring these Hello Freedom series to you. And Freedom Altogether is because I was helped. And so now I want to pay it forward and pass that help along. And this is part of a bigger journey of building something bigger. You see what I mean? I know this is possible. So this is why these topics are important. So if you're doing something right now and you think that you're failing, I want you to take a different perspective and say, maybe what you're doing maybe you need to discover a different angle. Maybe it might lead you. Take my story, for example. Had I never been a landlord where the landlord thing didn't work and led me to bankruptcy, I may not have ever discovered the owner financing route. I may not have discovered that. Maybe I would have, I don't know. But the point that I'm making is me talking about my situation, a total stranger that I met at this workshop conference, opened up about another perspective of why not do owner financing. I may not have come across that perspective had I not shared my story. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying that you have to tell everyone your business, but what I am saying to you is you have to be willing to open up and look at, okay, maybe this isn't failure. Let me stop looking at it like it's winning or failing. I like to see this term failure as steps, like you're taking steps toward a bigger action. So let's say you're on the first floor and second floor is your goal. Okay, every step that you take, whether it's considered a fail or a win, is still leading up to that next level. That's the analogy that I like to look at, and the reason why this is important is because a lot of times people will take failure or what they perceive as failure and see it as a discouragement, where it's like they give up, to where it's like, oh, I'm not going to do this. This isn't going to work for me, blah, 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 blah. And I just want to open you up to a different perspective. All right. So that's F in fail. So F is for finding your solution, see your whys, research, try to go on the discovery. Now we're going to move to A. Let me just get a drink of water, you all. There we go. Now we're going to move to A. A is for action. All right. Your action, this is what I wrote in my notes. Your action adds to your experience. Again, let me repeat that. Your action adds to your experience. So if you look at, whether you see it as failure or wins, if you look at this as it's a step forward, like the analogy I just gave you, this is going to be a part of your experience. And you know how we've had sessions where we talked about finding your why, or for those of you who are looking for income opportunities or creating income opportunities, there has been quite a few people that said, hey, talk about income opportunities. Well, look at things in your life that has worked and not worked. Look at, what did you learn from it? Did it lead to something else? Maybe this might be something that you can teach other people, maybe in a course or on some videos or a blog. It's an opportunity. You see what I'm saying? So A is for action. Your action adds to your experience. And so the next thing in this action piece of this is, what are your next steps? What are you going to do next? See, I like to focus on solutions. I don't like to focus on, oh, this isn't working for me. And now I do have real talks with myself and say, okay, I need to find a different way to do this. So let me think about what's a different approach. You see what I mean? I'll do that, but I don't like to live in this isn't working. This isn't working. I'll tell you, last night when I landed in Toronto, I had a moment, I was tired. The weather was different because I came from Vegas where it was warm and came into Canada where it was like 40 degrees. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to wear a jacket. So I had this moment. I was hungry. Then when the plane landed, their customs is so slow, so slow. They were like, anyone who have a connecting flight, I think I recorded it and I'm probably going to put it on TikTok or something. But they were like, anyone who have a connecting flight, you can go ahead and get off. But everyone else, we have a customs hold. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I have to use the restroom. Like, what is going on? What is this customs hold? I'm thinking like, is it somebody on the plane that did something? Or, and so we sat on the plane for a long time. Like, I'm like, I don't know how long, maybe 30 minutes. I don't know. It just seemed like forever in my mind. Like once you're done with a long flight, you're ready to get off. And so I got off and their airport is, the thing about their airport, and I'm not complaining, but I'm using this as an example. The thing about their airport is their signage is not the greatest. So let's say you're looking for a rental car. It's not an obvious sign to say rental cars. It just says, this terminal, you have terminal 1, you have terminal 3. And so customs took forever to get out of. I have a Nexus card. They didn't even have a thing to say, go to the Nexus lane. So I had a moment where I was just like, I'm so frustrated at this. And, and so by the time I got through all of that, an hour and a half later, I started, I started trying to find the rental car, and I had a moment where I started complaining to myself. I was like, why am I not finding this? And I asked people for directions, and they were like, you just go there and up the train and go to this thing. And I'm like, okay, so I tried this. I ended up going to some whole different terminal. All the car rental places were closed in that terminal. So I had to go back. And so I got to this point where in my mind, when I was in that moment of what's happening, what's going on, I couldn't think clearly. But I said to myself, Steve, what do I normally do in situations like this? And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go eat. I'm going to pause what I'm doing. So I went, ate, and my mind became so clear. At that point, I knew exactly what I needed to do. So it just all, so I went there, I got everything situated and I left. But when I was talking about what's going on, it had me wandering around and frustrated until I just said, let me stop, breathe, eat, and focus. Why am I sharing with you what happened to me in the airport last night? I'm sharing with you that that's no different than life. When we're focused on what's going wrong and, in a way to where we're just like, I'm not saying you can't vent. I'm not saying that. Venting is okay. But at some point, we have to look at solutions. We have to look at what is our next action step. You see what I'm saying? And running around in the airport like that, for me, it opened up my perspective to, okay, all these concepts that I do with life, it also applies to these type of situations. And that made me think about, it actually gave me time to think about this fail, F-A-I-L, Fired Up Freedom will be right back after these messages. Do you ever look for certain services or products and it's just hard to find and you want to know if someone else has used that before? Well, visit my resources page, steveryan.com/resources, steveryan.com/resources. So, but let's go to I for internal process. So right now we're talking about failure. Is failure really failure? F is for finding your solution. A is for action. And I is for internal process. Internal process is, how are you viewing it? Is it truly a failure? Some of this I talked about earlier, so these last two may go by pretty quickly. But, is it truly a failure, or do you just see it that way from your perspective? You see what I mean? This sounds general, but it can apply to any topic. It can apply to anything. It can apply to anything that you're doing. You know, like yesterday we talked about looking at the glass half full or glass half empty, and we talked about something to the effect of, well, just look at it as a glass. So rather it's half full or half empty, it's still a glass with some water in it. So when it comes to failing, winning, good, bad, it's all subjective. It really, really is. So think about that. So how are you processing it? Again, it's okay to be a human if you need to vent, if you need to talk to some people about it. But at some point, you're going to have to get to a place where you can say, okay, you know what? Let me process this and let me move forward. All right. L is looking at the big picture. This is the last piece to this, and then I'm done with my notes. Looking at the big picture. How does your situation in that moment look in the grand scheme of things? So what you perceive as failure in that moment, is it really failure in the big picture? You see what I mean? Like, take my example that I gave you of how I had to, end up going through bankruptcy because of all these rental properties where I had renters that stopped paying and or slow to pay, and I had to deal with eviction and blah, blah, blah. I could have took that as I'm done with real estate. I'm never dealing with this again. It's never working for me. But I didn't take it that way. I took it as, okay, this is a learning experience. I don't want to be a landlord. And if I ever do be a landlord in the future, I'd rather do it with the management company and do it with like an apartment complex or something of that nature, and not like individual homes. But that's my journey, my path. You see what I'm saying? So I looked at the big picture and I said, well, why am I doing this? I said, well, my whole purpose of doing this was to find a way to get passive income coming. I said, being a landlord is not passive income, it's active income, unless you have someone else doing it for you, like a management company. But I didn't want to deal with that. So it led me to that solution, eventually, of the owner financing route. So this is it. So just to recap, FAIL is failure, really failure. F is for finding your solution. A is for action. I is for internal process. And L is for looking at the big picture. Now, I'm going to open up for anyone who wants to come up, excuse me, and ask any questions or share any, thank you, or, excuse me, or share any comments or anything. My voice is a little hoarse. I'll open up the floor for that. In the meantime, I know someone said that the website is confusing, steveryan.com. Here's where you can get to our community where you can talk to other people. So I'm going to the website right now on the computer, steveryan.com. And right on the top right, there's something that says community chat. Is at the top. If you don't go anywhere else on the page, just go all the way to the right, and it says community chat. And that's where you click on that. It'll take you right into our community Discord. That's what we use for our community chat. It's real easy to use. You just go in there, verify that you're not a robot, and have some wonderful conversations. Come and introduce yourself. Let us know where you're from or whatever you want to share. We would love to have you in there. You know how I talked earlier about network? See, that's a great place for networking too. That's a great place for meeting people too. You'll see some conversations in there. We say good morning to each other. People share stories. They share how they're doing. It's pretty awesome. All right. And we have Rap the Rooster wants to come up. So let's bring you up here. Hey, Rap the Rooster, how are you?
Oh, I'm not too bad. How are you doing this morning, Steve?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. All right.
Canada, huh? Canada today.
Yeah, I'm in Toronto today.
Quite a difference, like you were saying, between Vegas to there. Goodness.
Definitely a 40-degree temperature drop.
Is there any snow on the ground up there yet?
It actually is. North of here, there is. Not where I'm in the city right now, but north of here, there's some snow.
I'm definitely a little bit jealous. I think this year I'm ready to see some snow. It's been hot. It's been humid. It's been sunny. I'm ready to make some snowballs, some snowmen, and maybe a couple forks along the way.
That's awesome.
Definitely. I think, the failure is failure. I think it really shouldn't be. I feel that too many people get wrapped up on whether or not the rest of the world sees what they're doing as a success. And in the long run, whether you earn income, gain property, tokens, NFTs, what have you, whether there's gain or not, the experience itself is of value, no matter what that experience turns out to be. It could be the worst day of your life, or it could be the happiest day of your life. And there's something to be learned from it. There's something to be gained from that moment in time. And I don't see it as a failure anymore. Even if it doesn't go the way you think, eventually the path comes clear and you will see it. And there's a success story in there because you got up, you continued on, you pushed forward. And that's what life's success really, truly is about, is just seeing tomorrow.
I love that. And I love the point that you made where you said a lot of times people can look at how other people are judging them. And that's a great, very interesting point. I feel like where that falls into this fail map would be internal process on the I and looking at the big picture on the L. Like the internal process is, okay, if other people see something as a failure, number one, who cares? Number two, will that, does that really make a difference in the grand scheme of things? I know we have things like reputations and things, but what people have to understand is that I feel like it's all about being transparent with people. To be able to say, you know what? This piece didn't work for me, but this is what I did. This is how I overcame it. It leads to a great overcoming story. It really, really does. Like, for example, me sitting up here saying, it was a point of time that I was embarrassed to say that I had to file bankruptcy before. That was embarrassing to me. That, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm supposed to, people say I'm a pretty smart guy and things like that. And here I go having to file bankruptcy. At the time, it made me feel embarrassed. I didn't want to talk about it at all. But then I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? It's not so bad. This was actually a smart decision. So who cares what people think at the time? And now, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't matter anyway. So I love the point that you make about other people's judgment and not caring about what other people think. That's a very, very generalized statement, but it's so specific and it's so useful. Getting bogged down. Absolutely. That was a great point.
And I have to, I have my own type of bankruptcy. For me, it's not bankruptcy, but I had a child that she's 10 years old this year, and I was living in Arizona at the time. I fell down a hard path. I ended up racking up a whole lot of child support, and by a whole lot, when I moved to Oklahoma 6 years ago, I was in debt to the state of Arizona and my ex-wife for $32,000 in 6 years. I was like, I didn't tell people about that. I told them that I had fines, that I had tickets, that I had different things. I didn't tell people that I wasn't providing for this child that I had helped create. And now, in 6 years, I paid off $32,000 worth of child support. And that's not a failure. It was not a bad thing that I racked that up, because I lived the experiences that I did. I seen a side of the world that unfortunately too many people see and not enough people get out of. And I came out of it stronger, and I came out of it with a will to continue on. And you know what? I found the people I needed, and that $32,000 is now a big old fat zero, and I'm completely done with it. So in the end, it may be a shameful thing. It may be hard to talk about. People could judge you, but it doesn't matter, because you get up, you fight on, you move forward, and you learn. And that learning and that knowledge, you will not get something more valuable than that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that share. That was so awesome. And and I appreciate you all when you come up and share, because someone else may be going through that experience. Someone else may be going through what you're going through. And that can give them encouragement and hope. This has been an awesome conversation, you all. I really appreciate you. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about how do you move energy. That's going to be a great conversation as well. Right now, today, again, for those of you who wants to come into our community chat, the links are up on Clubhouse. It's also on Twitter Spaces, and anywhere else. You can just go to steveryan.com and then click on the link that to the top right that says community chat, and you'll be able to come into our Discord. Running from myself at times, I can't describe the words I try.